So, should you freeze your eggs? This is something that I discuss with a lot of my patients. So sometimes it gets to the point where actually it's not an option anymore. It's just going to be part of the IVF procedure. But ahead of that, is it something you should think about? So egg freezing essentially is extracting your eggs, freezing them, and then the idea is that you can use them in the future if you so wish to do so. The process includes some hyperstimulation of your hormones, which means that you then produce more eggs, and then that gives you a better chance of having enough eggs to freeze for use at a later date. So the ideal candidate really is someone, the younger you are, the better, because it is well known that eggs will go off the older that you get. So the younger you are, the better. So if you're in your 20s to your 30s, that's absolutely perfect. All other things being equal. We're talking very generic here, okay? But that's your ideal perfect time. That said, if you're older and for whatever reason you're freezing them ahead of time, your eggs are still only ever going to be better now than they will be later, unless you're doing something like we do in our program, which is to improve the quality of the eggs. But all, just we're talking about standard situations here. Okay, so don't be put off because you're perhaps a bit older than, say, the mid-30s that I'm talking about being the ideal candidate, because the eggs you've got will still be better than if you're older than you are today, because as we get older, and so do our eggs essentially, and we all deteriorate with age, unfortunately. So that is one of the things. Now, thinking about the benefits of egg freezing, once they're frozen, it extends that fertility window, okay? Because the eggs will go off sooner, off their boil, if you like, sooner than your ability to house them and carry a child will go off. So if you've got better quality eggs, then you're extending that fertility window that you've got. It could decrease the stress that you have about conceiving later on, particularly if you're not quite ready now for whatever reason. And it provides like a plan B, an alternative option as well, if natural conception does become an issue later on, because we all expect it's going to work fine. No one really goes into this expecting it to be difficult. So it just gives you that little backup. Now, in terms of success rates, whilst egg freezing can help, it doesn't guarantee a pregnancy later on. And so what it can do is, and I've had this with some of my ladies actually, it can lull you into a false sense of security. So you put off having a child, put it off, put it off, put it off. And then it turns out that the eggs that you've frozen are not viable for whatever reason, they don't take. And then your window with the eggs you've got left has absolutely closed. Or as far as the medical teams are concerned, you know what, we've obviously done some work to improve them at that point, but don't let freezing your eggs lull you into that extreme false sense of security. There are also a couple of complications that could come out of stimulating your ovaries, because that's a hormone treatment. So think about that. And also, your age. The younger the eggs when they're frozen, the slightly higher the chances are that they have of a success rate. So if you know that your eggs are really poor quality, to be honest, if they're not going to take, is it worth putting your body through that hyperstimulation and the egg retrieval, etc.? What you might want to do at that point is, this isn't meant to be selling the program, but to come and to improve the quality of your eggs so that then you can either go ahead and reproduce naturally or have better quality eggs when you're going in for the IVF treatment or IUI, whatever it is that they end up doing. Okay, so that I think is it. Do not underestimate the mental health impact of freezing eggs, whether that be it's taking the stress off or it actually it becomes a stress because you have to go through this kind of mini IVF procedure to get the eggs retrieved. I would always say to my ladies, if you think that you definitely want children in your future, but you're not sure when and how that's going to be, I would always freeze my eggs, because knowing what I know now, you've kind of at least got something in the bank, but don't rely on that as being your guarantee for future, because I've seen it where ladies have done that and the heartache is awful, because that's when the guilt comes in. People are then beating themselves up because they've taken things too easily, if you like, and not really pushed because they had these eggs frozen, and it's lulled them into that false sense of security, when, you know, actually there's still all of the other complications that could come. It's just that your eggs are younger than you are. If you are thinking about the costs, I think, you know, it depends where you're going, but if they're going to retrieve the eggs and give you the drugs and stuff, it can be anywhere between, in the UK, £3,000 and £8,000. Then the storage fees actually are really quite reasonable, anywhere between about £200 and £400 ish to store them every year. So have a think about that as well. Obviously, when you're going to have them put back into you and processed at the other end, then there's going to be a cost associated with that too at that side. But the actual egg freezing, it's cheaper than a small car. Now, in terms of whether it's right for you or not, only you know your personal situations and how you feel, and instinctively what you think your body is going to be able to tolerate, and you mentally, you know, how this would make you feel, if it would put you under pressure or if it would ease the pressure. So that is for you to consider. Think about your health, your age, your fertility goals for the future, and your personal circumstances as well. And then if you want to speak to a specialist, then of course that's great. Now, I think that is about everything I was going to say. I reached an abrupt end there. If you've got any questions, as always, you can always ask me.